Henry Morris, the magician of the 8th Circle, stood on the execution platform. He stood surrounded by 2 guards and wore magical handcuffs. On the faces of those who respected him, there was great sorrow and bitter regret. The man sighed unhappily at the thought of the drunken poison distorting the flow of true mana in his body. But he had to drink this poison because of the condition of the people under his protection. He realized the inevitability of this day, but continued to believe in his old friend Jackson Edward Golden, the last king. His heir Jackson Edward Silver destroyed all traces of his father's rule. For the nobility, it was a great opportunity to enrich themselves. The king was a stubborn tyrant, impossible to deal with. Once on the throne, he began to exterminate the ancient clans that bothered him under the pretext of treason. Henry Morris looked saddened and didn't understand what had happened to the king, for he had been a kind child. The king's henchman tells the hero to kneel, calling him a criminal. He is accused of treason and asked to confess his intentions to rebel against the imperial family. The king's servant, with arrogance in his eyes, began to say all rebels must be killed or arrested. The hero gets angry at their endless lies, and with fiery rage in his eyes, asks them to stop and kill him. The king trembles with horror, looking into eyes that remind him of his father, and orders the hero to be killed immediately. The executioner raises his sword, and Henry Morris says with great annoyance and sadness that even after death, he will not be able to forgive them. The happy king orders his lifeless body to be fed to the beasts, so after 20 years of a single contingent, the Archmage of the 8 Circles is sent to the other world. Henry Morris wakes up in a cold sweat in a room previously unknown to him. His mind flashes back to the memory of Bahad taking his head off. The hero does not understand anything, and in his hands there is a lifeless body of a duck and a tattered book. He's holding a book on necromancy, and he's wondering if he's somehow involved. Henry Morris goes to the mirror and thinks it's a dream because he doesn't look like himself. He can't believe his eyes and thinks it's nonsense that black magic was used in the room, which he himself eradicated. He thinks that maybe the rite was dedicated to him, and he looks around the room for the owner of the body. After examining the book, he decides that the necromancer did not succeed. Probably not enough experience, and the book is badly damaged. The guy feels good, even though a couple minutes ago the poison was burning his body from the inside out, and those people were looking at him like a caged animal. The hero realizes that judging by his clothes, the young necromancer is not a poor man, and his body is not chivalrous. The guy decides that maybe the body master is a magician and focuses on the spiritual core energy. The hero doesn't feel anything, realizes he's not a mage, he doesn't have a magic ring, and he's not a knight either. He's focused on creating a spiritual center to possibly learn something, for it needs a strong foundation. The hero believes that at least one circle should turn out, because he is the Archmage of the 8 Circles and the former Supreme Master of the Empire. Henry Morris attempts to create a magic circle with tremendous focus and diligence. With incredible diligence, with hundreds of drops of sweat coming off him, he managed to create the first magic circle. He spent a lot of energy and effort on it and decided to end it for the day. At that very second, he remembers the king and mentally intends to send him to the other world. Because of an evil king, he had to drink poison to watch his friends and the people who believed in him. The hero is very angry and says that if he were a knight, even poison wouldn't stop him from confronting them. The guy never thought that after death, he would admire the knight's strength, because even if the magic is stronger, they have a very weak body. As he leaves the room, he sees a sleeping servant sitting against the wall, and realizes that the owner of this body is no commoner. After coughing in front of the servant, the hero wakes him up and the servant sleepily addresses him, calling him master. The servant gets up from his seat and walks over to the guy and stands in front of him in a disrespectful pose and with a haughty face. Henry Morris was not jokingly angry, not understanding why the servant was treating his master so contemptuously. The servant, with indignation in his eyes and a smirk on his face, asks if the guy is okay. The angry guy automatically kicks his servant in the leg. The servant is completely confused and frightened, trying to understand why he hit him. Before he could finish his sentence, the guy punches the servant in the face. Holding his hand over his face, the servant ponders the situation and has to believe that his master has wised up. He immediately bows to the guy and asks him to forgive the stupid slave. Henry Morris warns that this was the last time, and the next time, his hand won't waver, and he'll send him to the next world in a heartbeat. Without raising his head, the servant promises not to do it again, and to be more careful from now on. With his back turned to the servant, the hero asks what today's date is. Through a quick glance at his servant, Henry Morris unhappily clucked. I apologized and corrected that it was July 6th of the 20th year according to the Empire's calendar. The hero realizes it's only been 1 day since his death. He asks the man who is his servant what is the name of his master standing in front of him, who replies that his name is Henry Morris. The guy shockingly asks the servant, and the servant replies that it's his name for the truth. Not believing what he heard, the boy asks what his father's name is, and he says, Baron Hans Morris. The hero smiles at the fact that his name hasn't changed, and that fate is an interesting thing. Baron Hans Morris was a hero of the Battle of Unification and got his merits for it. The guy learns that the owner of the body was not born into a baron's family, and that he is neither noble nor commoner. After carefully going through his entire family tree, he found nothing about this family. His father was never interested in titles, and his mother died in childbirth. The eldest gave no hope and achieved nothing in life. Any chance of success was Mrs. Morris's second son, Kevin Morris's half-brother Henry. The guy thought that maybe that was why the owner of the body decided to contact dark magic to surpass the illegitimate. The hero closes the book and realizes that this family is unremarkable and that they have essentially nothing. Henry Morris decides to start at the bottom when he and Gold Jackson arrive from the tiny country of Moonwadham and build the walls of an empire. He realizes he should get into magic as soon as possible and create a magic circle. He starts looking out the window at the moon and realizes he has plenty of time before dawn. But first, he has to do the nastiest thing. Morning came and the sunlight streamed into the room where Henry Morris was practicing without a wink of sleep and sweat. In such a short time, he's managed to reach stage 3 of the circle formation. His servant opens the door with washing water in his hands and is surprised that his master has not gone to bed. The man doesn't understand why he's so sweaty and offers to give him a bath, but he refuses. The hero asks the man to wait outside, closing the door, and after thinking for a while, he realizes that his master has changed. Henry Morris, at the snap of his fingers, was clean of sweat and dirt and refreshed in an instant. After a bit of thinking, the guy realizes that he's going to have a tougher time getting to the 4th stage of the lap. He realizes he'll need a lot of mana for this stage, so he'll hold off. When he opens his closet and looks at the clothes, he sees that they're the same old blandness. Taking a deep breath, he realizes there's no time for his whims and puts on the first thing he sees. He goes out of the room into the corridor where a servant is waiting for him and asks him to take him to the dining room to satisfy his hunger. The boy follows the man down a long hallway and enters a room at the end of it. In the dining room at the big table, already seated and waiting for the Morris family. After looking at everyone at the table and making sure that the owner's mother is really dead, he sits down at the table. Henry Morris is overjoyed to see the delicious food on the table. Although the family has not been publicized in social circles, but they know a lot about food. The hero, with disgust, started to look at the second son of the family who does not know the rules of etiquette and behaves horribly at the table. Henry Morris calls out to the boy and asks him to eat more quietly. He stops short, raising his eyes unhappily to the hero. Not believing what he heard, and not even covering a mouthful of food, Kevin Morris laughs at the top of his voice. Grudgingly smirking and bringing his fork to his mouth, Kevin Morris advises his brother to stay out of it, and himself as usual. The hero finishes his meal and puts his napkin to his mouth, his face showing his great dislike for Kevin Morris. Not paying attention to the squabble between the brother's father, is not distracted from slicing pieces of meat, asks which of them decided to enter the combat academy. They haven't come to one conclusion yet, but Henry Morris inadvertently thinks it's a good idea. He imagines that if he enrolls in a combat academy, that by the time he graduates, he will be much stronger and his body will be stronger. But he realizes that it would take him a long time to do that, and he could create a lot of laps that he doesn't need years of training for. Kevin Morris interrupts his father and begins to say that there is nothing to think about because he will definitely do what he has the best chance to do. Hans Morris thinks about his son's words and agrees with them, also asks Henry if he agrees. Kevin Morris enters the conversation saying he shouldn't go there because he will be bullied at the academy. Henry Morris becomes enraged and interrogates his brother to see if he really thinks he's going to be bullied. Kevin nonchalantly began to say that if it weren't so, he wouldn't have avoided conflict with him. The father sided with Kevin Morris, believing him to be right, even though his words sounded harsh. The father asks the lad what he can say to that, while Henry begins to see in him the traits of an evil king. The guy started saying that he'd changed and that he should be represented at the academy by the heir, not by an ill-mannered brat. Kevin Morris leaps out of his chair and angrily pummels the table with his fists, screaming at his brother in not understanding those words. The hero protests that he didn't mess with him, not because he's weak, but because he didn't want to hurt his little brother. Everyone at the table stares at Henry Morris with great surprise for a few seconds. The guy is angry and in the confusion of what's going on because everyone behind started laughing and wiping away tears. Father started to tell the guy is not joking so more, but the hero does not intend to back down and asks his father for a contest with Kevin. He agrees, but he asks if the guy's sure he wants to do it. Henry Morris enthusiastically responds yes and asks his father to watch them compete. If they're really ready, their father asks them to go to the training ground. The hero confidently thinks to himself that he'll teach Kevin Morris a good lesson. Kevin and Henry stand across from each other on the practice field while their father and wife and their servants come out to watch. Kevin Morris proudly tosses a wooden sword to his brother standing across from him. Catching the sword and twirling it in his hand, Henry Morris feels that the wooden sword weighs the same as a real one. Henry Morris, a servant, watches their duel with interest and believes that since he has changed, he may be able to defeat his brother, while the other servants watch without interest. The father announces the rules of the fight. The one who makes the other surrender wins. But they must not forget that they are brothers. After the rules have been announced, Hans Morris shouts for them to start the fight with a hand signal. Kevin smirked and began to say that he was giving the first blow to his brother, but he did not miss this opportunity to increase his strength, agility, and accelerate his reflexes. The guy thinks that even if his magic isn't as strong as it used to be, it's strong enough to take down the proud brother. At the speed of light, Henry Morris leaps into the sky, leaving the others and Kevin puzzled. Not expecting such a turn from his brother, Kevin unintentionally recoiled and shrieked. Henry hits Kevin's wooden sword with a very hard blow, and he can barely stand up from the force of the blow. Baron Hans Morris, Kevin Morris's mother, and even the maid are shocked by what is happening out of the blue. Before his brother could realize what was happening, Henry Morris grabbed him by the neck, causing him considerable pain. With one sharp movement of his foot, Henry drops Kevin to the floor and even his sword flies to the side. Henry Morris raises his wooden sword over frightened Kevin and prepares to finish the fight. The hero hits his brother on the head with a wooden sword, but his blow is so strong that if he continues, he may break bones. The frightened mother asks Baron Hans to stop the duel, but equally frightened, he struggles to find the words. The Baron asks his son to stop, because at such a rate he can send his brother to the grave. Hearing this, the hero stops, sticks a wooden sword in the ground next to his frightened brother. The hero asks if he still has to prove anything. With shocked expressions on their faces, Baron Hans Morris and his wife Mrs. Morris answered in the negative. The hero decided to leave the training ground and suggesting that they return to this conversation tomorrow. The man who was Henry Morris's servant could not believe his eyes and how strong his master had become. After the fight, the servant sat surrounded by his friends and told them about what had happened, although they could not believe that the guy had changed so much all of a sudden. The servant asks his friend, who was also there to confirm his words, and he agrees that Kevin didn't stand a chance against Henry. The other two interlocutors look at each other and don't understand why the guy was hiding his abilities. The guy takes a bath after the fight and recognizes that this body isn't so bad and has a predisposition to magic. The hero is puzzled by how lazy the owner of the body was, that he's accomplished nothing in so many years. Henry Morris decides to try once again to create a fourth circle and concentrates hard to do so. After a moment, he feels an unbearable pain in his chest. He realizes that his strength is not yet enough. A little while later, distracted by the pain, he remembers there's another way. The next day, the boy asks his servant named Kohol to get the healing herbs as soon as possible. The boy assures the servant he's not sick and to just bring the herbs without further question. Kohol leaves to do the task, and Henry starts to watch and hopes that the herbs he needs are growing nearby. A marvelous elixir created by the hero when he was in the 7th stage of circularization, which took him 6 months to complete. The blue miracle elixir he created unlocks a person's full magical potential. But the elixir can also become a drug, and each person's tolerance is different. The elixir also puts a tremendous strain on the heart to release mana, so many only drink it once in a lifetime. If you miscalculate the dosage at the wrong stage, your heart could fail. The next day, Kohol had already returned. He was able to find everything on the list except one. The servant couldn't get what was at the bottom of the list: a green crow's flower. The servant explained that the trade routes were besieged by bandits, and they had been unable to deliver the goods for half a month. Henry Morris was surprised at such a long deadline and asked if Baron Hans Morris knew about it. Kohol told of the Baron trying to catch the brigands, but they proved completely elusive. The hero is surprised that the Baron couldn't handle a bunch of brigands and asks to pack up. The lad asks the servant to prepare 2 horses because he wants to visit these elusive outlaws. The servant asks his master not to go because those places are dangerous even in peacetime, and even more so now that they are patrolled by brigands. The guy started to say that he was going with him too. Kohol was stunned by his master's words. Henry Morris needs a crow's flower, so he assures Kohol that he'll go there by all means. Kohol leads a scrawny, barely alive horse out of the stable that looks sick and infirm. Henry is dissatisfied and asks if there is no other horse. The servant assures him that this is his horse, and there are no others. Henry Morris asks Kohol to bring him his sword and also to bring something for himself for the trip. The servant leaves and the guy turns to the horse, pities it, and says it's unlucky to have a master. He strokes the horse's face and gives it the name Jade, which is what his horse used to be called before he retired. The guy decides to modify the horse and writes a spell on it to work. It needs to be a fourth circle mage, so he'll settle for little. He scribbles magic hieroglyphics all over the horse and it starts modifying. During the modification, the horse feels a lot of pain. The hero apologizes to it because he is too weak to reduce its pain. The modification is complete and the horse looks many times more powerful and healthy than it was. After a while, Kohol comes back and brings the sword. The hero grabs it and starts to tell him he's getting ready to lead. The servant sees the horse and is surprised, and looking at it, asks the master where he found the other horse. The hero replies that it's the same horse. Kohol can't believe his eyes and swears that it looked completely different. The guy asks him if he thinks he's a liar, and he says he's mistaken, and it's really the same horse. Henry Morris tells him to lead the way, and the servant rubs his eyes, still unable to believe what he's seen. Already preparing to go on the road, the guy asks the servant if he has taken enough jewelry. Kohol answers that he has, but fears that the gentleman will be displeased, to which the hero assures him that they did not steal, but simply borrowed. Kohol agrees with him. Henry tells him to be careful and not to lose anything. Riding away on their horses, the lord and his subject Kohol went to the let for the crowflower. To attract the bandits, the hero asks the servant to wear several pairs of earrings. Even though Kohol does not like it, he complies with the request. Henry Morris is pleased with the amount of decorations on Kohala and has started saying it's enough. In addition to the earrings, the servant also put on gold chains. Kohol exhaled after the jewelry was enough because he was not happy about the idea. They heard noises in the neighborhood and decided to slow down to attract bandits. Kohol is worried and starts telling the hero that it's not too late to come back because bandits are dangerous people. Henry starts to say it's settled and smirks and adds that he's not going to the other side alone. The servant is already trembling with fear because of his master's words, and he asks him to calm down because he was only joking. When they reach the village, they are surrounded by bandits several times their size. Henry guessed that they had been following them for some time now. The brigands acting recklessly, wondering if they had realized they had guards. The chief of the bandits turns to them and threatens to pull out all the gold they have. The gold jewelry must have shone brightly because the leader of the band of robbers came to see them in person. The bandit leader with the evil face began telling them to take off their trinkets and leave the horses, then they would remain unharmed. An agitated Kohol asks Henry Morris what they should do, since there are 12 brigands they can't handle. The hero turns to the servant and begins to say that he will finish by his awakening. The servant, who had no time to understand anything, is knocked out by his hand. After falling asleep, Kohol immediately falls off his horse. All this time, the ringleader, who has been watching them, is wondering what the guy is doing. The hero smiles and replies that he knocked him out so he wouldn't interfere with their battle. The outlaw grins, saying he can't handle them alone, and forgives his boys to send him to the other side of the world. Henry looks around and counts the number, and is disappointed to count only 25 people. The bandit leader assures me it's no problem because he's going to the afterlife anyway. Suddenly, at the snap of his fingers, bubbles of water formed around the dumbfounded brigands. Bubbles of water formed around their heads, and they couldn't breathe anything. After a while, due to lack of air, they all fell to the floor unconscious. And even the leader of the band of robbers, the strongest among them, could not cope and fell down exhausted. Henry Morris forms a huge fireball and prepares to shoot the ringleader. He fires a shot that startles the man, who trembles, covering his ears and eyes. The hero warns them not to come here again, or next time he'll personally send them to the next world. After a while, Kohol wakes up and looks around frightened, but does not see the bandits, turning to his master and asking where they are, to which the guy replies that they have scattered. The dazed servant sits on the floor, unable to utter a word, and the hero asks him to check the jewelry, all of which should be in place. Back at the manor, Kohol checks the bag of jewels one more time and starts to say that he will put them back where they belong. Henry Morris teases the servant by asking if he's going to steal them. The servant is angry at the guy's words and denies, saying he has never stolen and has no intention of doing so. After a while, Henry goes to the stable to return the horse and notices his steward. The old man respectfully removes his hat and inclines his head in greeting to Mr. Henry Morris. Since the stable manager is already here, the guy decides to check the condition of the building, to which the old man suspiciously asked if he was sure. Meanwhile, Kevin Morris finally came to his senses after his fight with his brother. He remembers losing to his brother, who seems to have been replaced. Kevin's mother, who was sitting across from him, started yelling and berating him for losing to his talentless brother. Kevin Morris is shivering and drenched in cold sweat. He can't believe he lost. He can't get used to the fact that his brother won, even though he never did anything, unlike him, who works hard every day. Meanwhile, in the stables, Henry inspects the building and the horses. The manager shows the horses belonging to Baron Hans and his brother Kevin. Looking at the horses, he sees that they look decent, unlike his horse, which looked sickly. This makes the guy very angry. Henry Morris asks where his horse's stall is the manager with annoyance in his eyes, and reluctantly points to the end of the stable. The hero is shocked because in front of him is not a stall, but a wreck with damp and shattered boards. Apparently the manager did not care about his horse. Turning to the old man, the guy started to say that he would turn a blind eye for the first time, but from now on, he should take good care of his horse. He also said that his horse's name was Jade. The old man bows his head and with a pitiful face promises to correct his behavior and attitude towards Jade. Before leaving, Henry also reminds him not to forget about his father's and Kevin's horses and that he'll check it out properly next time. Evening came. The family gathered around the table for dinner, with food and candles on the table. Baron Hans Morris addresses his family asking if they'd like to talk. Henry Morris replies that he doesn't mind, and looking at Mrs. Morris asks her opinion. Missy Morris gets up unhappily from the table, saying that her words don't matter, and that she wants to leave the room, leaving them alone. The Baron glares at the guy and questions him about when he learned to use a sword and that he's never noticed him practicing before. With a chuckle, repeating the words about his father not noticing, Henry replies only that he should have taught his younger brother manners a long time ago. The satisfied father asks his son not to be modest and asks him if he has wanted to enter the academy for a long time. The boy only replies that he has thought about it and decided that it would be better for Kevin to go there. The expression on his father's face changed at the speed of light because of Henry's sudden change of heart. Henry decided that it was more important for Kevin to study at the academy to gain experience. Baron interrupts the guy, saying that recently his decision was radically different, and the duel was just to enter the academy himself instead of Kevin. The guy admits he was out of line, and also adds that Kevin had to prove he deserved admission, so he had one condition. The father wonders what the condition is for. The guy says he doesn't want his brother to just take advantage of his kindness. Henry Morris starts saying he wants to give him a trial, and if Kevin comes to his father about enrollment, for his father to refer him to him. The Baron sighed at his son's great change of heart and began to say that he would fulfill his request. A joyous Henry thanks his father and adds that he has heard that the brigands have disappeared from the trade routes. The shocked father can't believe his ears and furiously asks if the bandits have finally left them alone. Henry started saying that yes, if the words of the merchants are to be believed, the Baron decides to send men in the morning to verify these rumors. Looking out the window at the nighttime, Henry waits for Kevin and hopes he hasn't changed his mind. Finally, he hears a cautious knock on the door and asks the man behind the door to enter the room. Kevin Morris unlocks the door, hesitantly walks into the room, and turns to his older brother with a bit of hesitation. Reluctantly, he squeezes out the words that he was sent by his father to talk about getting into the academy. Henry Morris gets angry at his brother and scolds him, calling him a mumbler who can't speak properly. Kevin is frightened by what a different person his brother has become. He's not even entirely sure if his brother is standing in front of him. Pulling himself together and bowing his head, Kevin Morris asks his older brother for forgiveness for his behavior. The guy is surprised to finally hear Kevin say those words. Henry starts telling his brother that maybe his dad told him he's not going to go to the academy. The hero also adds that he does not need to try to claim his place, and perhaps of course they could study together, but it would cost a lot of money. Henry Morris started saying that if he really wanted to enroll, he'd be willing to give him that chance on one condition. Kevin Morris immediately interrupts, saying he'll do his best and wants to find out what the stipulation is sooner rather than later. The hero asks him to calm down and not to rush, and asks him if he knows about the Vernhelm territory. The younger brother began to say that he had heard about the lands in the north. Henry began to say that he had some business there and wanted Kevin to help him. Henry says that there is a crow's flower growing there and that he needs to get it, but he can't go to the merchants because of the bandits there. The hero asks Kevin Morris if he can go there and get him a crow's flower, and the second Kevin's voice assures me that he can do it and that it's a cakewalk. Henry asks him to settle down and starts saying it's not over. Little brother asks what else. In his mind, the hero is already thinking of a plan of revenge, and for it, he needs the crow flower as soon as possible. So he gives his brother 6 days for everything, and not a day more. Kevin is excited because for 6 days he will have to chase his horse at full speed and not even stop for a night's rest. Without waiting for an answer from him, the hero offers to give up if his task seems too difficult for him, but Kevin is not going to miss this chance. With full confidence, Kevin Morris firmly assures his older brother that he can handle anything. In the evening, the horses are grazing at the stables, and Kevin's horse for some reason didn't like Henry Morris's horse. She walks up to Jade and pushes her, but she doesn't pay any attention. Then Kevin Morris's white horse bites Jade and she goes ballistic. Jade kicks the restless and angry white horse with great force. Kevin Morris's horse brings up memories of bullying Jade, but now she was facing a very different horse, healthier and stronger. Arriving at the stable in the morning, the manager and Kevin are shocked to find his horse Grand lying exhausted. The horse lay still, sometimes shaking slightly, and foam came out of the horse's mouth. The manager does not understand what is happening to the horse. Then Kevin gets angry and reproaches him, because if even he does not understand, who should? The old man bows to the guy and begs him to forgive him because he really can't understand what's going on. Kevin Morris started saying he doesn't have time for this, and is looking around to choose the right horse for him. He sees Jade peacefully drinking water and points her out. The manager tries to warn her that the horse belongs to his brother, but he doesn't listen. Kevin Morris approached Jade from behind and tried to ride her, but she freaked out and immediately toppled him to the floor. The horse wanted to kick him with his hooves, but the superintendent got there just in time and pulled the guy off. The manager asks the boy to calm down and explains again that it's Henry Morris's horse. The boy is surprised because he didn't think the horse belonged to his brother. Remembering his brother's words and the fact that time is running out, he has no time to deal with it. He angrily punches the wall and picks a spare horse. Looking out the window at his brother, Henry realizes that now he has to wait and thinks he needs a strong body to deal with the poison. To gain it, he needs an aura. It's like the power of a warrior, only in the language of magic. It covers and nourishes the entire body. Learning to use aura simply by pushing your limit so a battle-hardened warrior gains the ability to use aura. Henry recalls his past life in youth where his friend begged him to learn how to wield a sword. He assured the hero he'd be much stronger, but he only made Henry Morris more annoying. Kohol comes back after a while, and the guy asks him to meet him after lunch. The Family Chronicle says there are only 2 swordsmen in the family. One of them is Baron Hans Morris. The second is a distant relative on his father's side of the family, the man in charge of security commander Baron. Henry Morris envisions a commander good with a sword and wants to see if he is capable. Walking around the grounds of the estate, he sees no one, and everything is very quiet around him. He notices a servant girl and asks her not to greet him, but rather to tell him where Sir Baron is. After a little thought, the young maid replies that perhaps he is on the training ground. On the way to the site, he is met by a tall man who is Commander Baron and asks him what he is doing in this slum. Henry Morris replies that it's nothing important, he just has something to ask. Henry dumbfounds Sir Baron by asking him to teach him how to wield a sword. The hero asks why he's surprised. Baron replies that he could have sworn he wasn't interested before. Guy with a twinkle in his eye starts saying he changed his mind and asks if he'll teach him. Sir Baron starts laughing loudly and starts talking about how the day has finally come when he has decided to take up the sword to become a worthy heir to the Baron. The guy starts to say that's a mouthful, to which Baron tells him not to be embarrassed. He wants to ask the guy about a question he's interested in. He wonders if the hero really beat Kevin Morris's little brother, and he answers in the affirmative. Baron asks if he learned it without his knowledge, to which the hero evades and assures him that he is now ready to learn from him. The man thinks it's weird because the Henry he knows would never beat Kevin. Turning to Henry, the man asks if they can fight each other. He explains that he needs to evaluate his abilities because of his win over Kevin Morris. Henry Morris, after a bit of deliberation, begins to say it's only fair and agrees to make peace with the powers that be. Commander Baron asks Henry Morris to go first and show what he can do. With great zeal and confidence, Henry Morris flies toward the commander to strike. But suddenly, at the last second, the man ducks out of the punch like nothing happened. The commander tries to stab the guy in the stomach, but he stops her with magic. The man is furious and thinks it's a misunderstanding, so he grabs a wooden sword to strike, but the hero ducks. Commander Baron doesn't know what's going on because it's almost impossible to dodge such a swift blow. Before he can even think about it, he gets hit by a guy and barely defends himself with a wooden sword. A tired man feels the power of Henry Morris and wonders when he became so strong. He's trying to figure out what the hero is hiding from him, and he wants to wear him down to do it. He swings another hard punch, but Henry easily blocks it, shocking the commander. Looking at his trembling wooden sword, the boy wondered if he was fighting the guard commander. The guy can see that he's a great swordsman even without the aura, so why is that talent wasted in the slums? Henry Morris was exhausted and thought he could not beat Baron. The captain throws more punches that he's blocking harder and harder. Looking at the guy who's still on his feet, the man says he's surprised. Commander Baron asks why he didn't show his abilities, and the hero replies that he only watched the others and repeated their blows. The man scrutinized the boy and thought about how he could learn just by watching, and he doesn't move like a beginner. Without waiting to hear what the commander has to say, Henry Morris interrupts his thoughts and starts saying he needs him. The man is greatly surprised at his words and a little unsure of what he's saying and interjects a little hesitantly. Henry began to say he didn't have to worry about formalities because from now on he was his teacher. The commander agrees a little absent-mindedly, and the guy realizes from his reaction that this was unexpected for him. Baron asks if he has studied Imperial techniques since many Imperials favor them. Remembering his friend Golden Jack, he recognizes something he's avoided all his life is now inevitable. Turning to the male teacher, he asks if they can start the lesson, and the man just starts saying that the word teacher is a bit of a burden. Since it's their first lesson, Baron decides to ask the boy what's most important in wielding a sword. Henry Morris responds that perhaps it is endurance, and the commander asks for clarification as to why. Henry Morris, after thinking confidently, replies that she is important in any business. The commander agrees that endurance is what keeps us going and surviving. The man asks him to remember their fight and find what he missed. The guy just replies that it's probably everything because he's still a rookie. The commander agrees and began to say that the main thing in everything is not to stand still and move forward. Henry recalls Golden Jack saying the same thing and that legs are the foundation. The guy thinks about whether their work is really so necessary. The commander, seeing the look on the guy's face, realizes that it's hard for him to understand. A man wants to show him how his mobility can make a difference. Baron throws out his sword, becomes in a stance, and asks the hero to attack with no restrictions on movement. Henry Morris is unhappy that he's starting to look down on it. Baron only corrects him that it's part of the first lesson. The guy uses magical armor for protection and warns me he's starting. Quickly sneaking up on Commander Baron, the boy strikes. But he was able to dodge and still managed to dodge several other blows with great speed. In the sweat of his face and with great eagerness, he tries time after time to strike the commander. In the blink of an eye, the guy loses sight of the man before he realizes it. Touching the hero's neck, the man is very intimidating. He suggests we call it a day. Henry Morris takes a breath and recognizes that his body is too weak. Even with magic, he couldn't overcome it. The man asks him to look down and asks if he can tell his footprints from his own. Baron asks if he can see the difference and replies that their style of movement is different. The commander points out that he was moving in a circle, and the guy's movements were erratic. The guy explains that he kind of has to move around a lot during the fight. Man started talking, that's not the point. He explained that we must first understand the enemy's movement pattern in order to determine where he will strike next. Looking at the commander's legs and contemplating his circular movements, he sees that magic was not used, and this is the imperial technique of circular orbs. Baron started saying that the hero needs to learn how to walk properly and control his stamina. The guy started saying he understands about endurance, but why waste time on circular steps? Baron only chuckles at his words and offers to start practicing. Baron began to say in a serious tone that they would practice circular motions until he succeeded in hitting him. He adds that only then will they move on to sword technique. Henry Morris is in high spirits, determined to get through the ordeal. For no small amount of time and using a lot of energy, Henry Morris has been doing push-ups. Exhausted, dirty, and sweaty, he just falls face first into the ground. But not a fallen spirit, and with great zeal, he uses the healing and continues to train. Henry trains without sparing himself and makes Commander Baron proud of his student. The man thinks to himself that survival of the fittest and notes that the Baron will like it. Henry Morris has been training for a long time, but nothing can make him train more effectively than thoughts of revenge against the king. If it wasn't for this king, he wouldn't have to go through this, and he would be sitting in his magic tower, thought the guy, looking at the sunset, and decided to finish training for today. The guy pulls out a notebook to write his new notes. He remembers his abusers and those who hurt his friends, and decides to write down everyone's name in his notebook. After making his notes in his notebook, he closes it and pulls out a map. He began looking at the western continent of Eurasia, is a name coined by Golden Jackson. He decides to concentrate on the northwest because he's hidden his gold and artifacts all over the world. If circumstances had been different, the blue miracle and the rest of the treasures would have been a generational treasure. But now he has to use them himself. He marks the places where he used to hide the treasure, slowly remembering each one. Someone suddenly opens the door and Henry Morris's gaze settles on the person entering. It turns out that Kohal has come to tell you that Kevin Morris has returned to the estate. The hero is surprised by the news because it's only been 5 days since he left. Jumping up from the table, Henry Morris asks a servant to lead him to his arriving brother. The hero and his servant hurry to meet Kevin with hasty steps walking down the corridor. They see a crowd of servants gathered at the door. Kohal coughs to attract attention, a look of consternation in the servants' eyes. Henry asks why they're here. The servants reply that Mr. Kevin Morris has returned in a terrible state. The maid turned to the boy and began to say that he should see it for himself, saying Kevin had met some bandits on the way. Henry thinks about the fact that he chased them away back then, and maybe others have taken their place. When he enters the room, he sees Kevin lying on the bed, with bandages and a worried mother standing over him, while the doctor is checking the patient's condition. The hero apologizes for barging in so unceremoniously to the attention of Kevin's weeping mother. Mrs. Morris grabs the guy by the scruff of the neck and yells that Kevin's in this state because of him. Holding the woman's hands and looking at his brother, he asks what happened to him. The doctor replies that he may have been attacked by wild animals. Concerned, the guy asks why the doctor would think such a thing. The man replies that such wounds could not have been inflicted with a weapon, and besides, the same marks on the horse. The guy asks if it is serious, and the doctor replies that he needs treatment and that his condition was no better before he left. Henry thanks the doctor and asks if he has finished his procedures. The doctor replies that he did what he could. Then, the guy asks them both to leave, even though the mother is not going to leave her son with him. Henry Morris starts looking at Kohal, and he realizes and starts saying he'll do it right away. Left alone with Kevin Morris, he examines his wounds. When Kevin comes to his senses and sees his brother in front of him, he tries to get up, but it hurts him a lot and asks him to lie down. Kevin lies down and begins to say that he got the green crow flower, thus completing the task. The hero praises his brother and promises him he'll get into the Magic Academy. Henry puts his brother to sleep and promises that he will feel much better upon awakening. The guy's healing him. Even though he's not a monk or a priest, his powers should be enough. After healing, he takes the crow flower from the room and says to himself contentedly that he is done. He and Kohal leave the room and walk back. And meanwhile, Mrs. Morris gives them an angry look, and Henry Morris is in his room making potion brews. Looking at the pot of potion ore, remembers that there was a time when he used to make this drink every year to select new recruits. The guy realizes that after his death, no one will be able to surpass him, and their potions will only be poor copies. After repeated freezing and boiling, the solution changes its color and odor, and any actions with it should be extremely careful. One mistake and your heart will burst from too much magical power, but it should work. The reason for the side effects is simple. The human body can't handle the effects of the elixir, so it comes down to how well you digest it. It is not less important that the control of magical power is not related to the physical state, is important fortress of mind and spirit. Taking the pot of elixir in his hands, the guy is still nervous, although in theory he should be able to do it. Very quickly, Henry Morris drinks all the magic drink in one gulp. The hero feels an unbearable burning pain as his whole body begins to melt. In agony, clutching at his neck, the guy sits on the floor with his legs bent. He sits in a motivational pose to control the force flowing through him and help himself deal with the pain. The hero feels a tremendous, unstoppable surge of energy. He realizes this is what he's been striving for. Henry Morris, through the incredible pain to just keep going, he's sure he can take all the energy. Henry thinks this one is much less painful than the last time. Apparently, his body remembers the energy. Began to form a circle, the hero does not believe it. Rather, he does not understand how it is possible. No sooner had he gotten used to the thought than the next circle formation began. Immediately after the formation of the fourth circle, began to form the fifth. The effect of the blue miracle exceeded all expectations of the guy. So Henry Morris became a fifth circle wizard. Some people don't live long enough to achieve it. Those who do are called wizards. Such people are able to fight back against opponents. Magic control can be compared to sword skills. Henry Morris wants to try and create another circle. He's a little upset that the elixir only lasted 2 laps, but it's still more than expected. He smells a very unpleasant odor in front of him and realizes it's from him. He takes off his dirty clothes and they don't understand why they're dirty because he cast a cleanliness spell. He goes to the mirror and sees that his body has gone from ordinary to very athletic. He realizes that the blue miracle has given him not only 2 laps, but an awakening. Awakening is a phenomenon concerning those who use magic. When the power reaches its limit, it expands its reserves. Everyone goes through this phase differently, but the one thing they all have in common is muscle growth. The stains were caused by dirt ejected from his body. He's using the cleanse, and he's happy that it's easier to train now. Kohol comes to him the next morning and can't cover his mouth in surprise. He sees his master no longer looking like a frail boy, but a real man with muscles in front of him. Kohol can't believe that overnight Henry Morris went from a frail boy to a strong man. Coming into the dining room and sitting down at the dinner table, the guy sees the shocked Morris family. They are greatly surprised at the deformation of his body. He has become much taller and much stronger. After a little silence from shock, the surprised father asks what has happened to him, because he has become much bigger. Trying to hide the truth with an uncertain smile, Henry Morris replies that he doesn't know how it happened and that he woke up like this. After a while coming to the training session, he is scrutinized from head to toe by the surprised commander. Baron wonders if the training has had such an effect on him, though even for them it is too much. The guy says what difference does it make now, but he'll be able to exercise a lot easier. Commander Baron wants to increase the intensity of training and also start with leg training. The hero is pleased with this news. The guy is climbing the mountain hard but diligently, and he can barely catch his breath. Finally climbing to the top, the hero feels how the air at the top is much cleaner and fresher. Henry Morris looks down and sees a huge chasm in front of him. Looking down in the hero's head, the idea of jumping up there head first. The same minute the guy jumps head first into the cliff and flies at bullet speed. After almost reaching the ground and almost crashing into it, Henry activates the soft landing effect. Satisfied with himself, he turns to the mountainside and uses the blast effect. Because of the wave directed at the mountain, it explodes and huge blocks of rocks fly to the ground. These huge rocks land really close to the guy and almost hit him. Meanwhile, there were herb gatherers near the mountain. They're startled by the sound and don't realize what it is and assume it's probably the sound of thunder. Meanwhile, the rocks are still falling, and in a few seconds they'll hit the hero standing underneath them. Right before the huge blocks touch him, the guy uses the freeze effect. It freezes all the shards and rocks flying off the mountain with magic freezing. The hero smiles, saying, "It's not bad." He's checking out all the possibilities of the circles he's recently received. The guy uses the blast wave to target the blocks he froze. They explode into shards and fall right towards the guy. Trying to feel all of his power, he runs past each shard at breakneck speed without touching it. Henry Morris walks past all the shrapnel and it embeds itself in the ground. With a satisfied smile and a puff of sweat, he began to say that with such strength, he would be able to accept his challenge. Back on the practice field, the kid starts telling the teacher to accept his challenge. Baron is shocked, but immediately reassures himself that he couldn't master the circular motion so quickly. The teacher agrees and starts saying that if he kicks him once, they'll start combat training. He's got 3 hours in which time he's got to strike to make it count. Henry Morris replies with confidence and enthusiasm that he is ready. The commander warns that if he loses, he will be punished. The guy replies that it's only fair. He also wants to check the level of awakening, and he's not going to use spells. Teacher Baron turns over the hourglass to signify the start of the competition. The second Henry Morris runs up to the teacher to throw his punch. Effortlessly and with a nonchalant face, Commander Baron dodges the blow. The hero does not give up and strikes another blow, which is also easily dodged by the commander. Baron watches how the guy moves and how the guy hits. Meanwhile, the guy tries to throw another punch. He intercepts his arm and effortlessly throws it over his shoulder. The guy falls to the ground. He starts looking at the teacher with anger and resentment. The commander started looking at the guy with a smirk and started saying he hadn't promised not to touch him. After a brief moment of thought and realization, the guy gets up off the ground, realizing that he needs to be even more vigilant. With a shout of frustration, he rushes with more blows at Master Baron. The commander fights him back, and with a little effort, throws the guy to the ground. From the blow, the guy slides on the ground a few more meters and stops with a hand. The hero is hurt and angry about the failures because everything turned out to be much more complicated than he imagined. The guy's trying to strike again to get closer to the commander, who in turn has no problem fighting back against the guy again. The guy starts looking at the hourglass and realizes time is running out. He looks at his teacher again and is surprised to see that he is so close to him. The second Commander Baron punched the guy in the stomach, and the way he went flying, the blow wasn't weak. Henry Morris is lying on the ground. He feels the pain of the teacher's blow making his legs shake. The hero rises, and then Commander Baron turns over the hourglass, saying time's up. The teacher starts to tell the guy that he lost, but he's clearly not happy with what he's hearing, and his face shows all his anger over losing. While the hero stands slack-jawed, Baron began to say that despite losing, he managed to surprise him. The teacher began to say that the boy had picked up his skills quite quickly. So the next challenge will be to double his stamina. Baron started saying that this day would be a lesson to him before challenging anyone to assess their strength grudgingly, but the hero agrees. Night came, and the hero, tired and exhausted from all the adventures of the day, lay down on his bed. Henry Morris is in a bad mood. He can't believe that even after the elixir, he is still weak. For the last few days, the hero has been practicing day and night without sparing himself, dodging countless ice shards and defending himself against wild animals. The guy thinks he's wasted his time and needs to find something to accelerate his learning curve. The hero thinks about it and berates his friend Jackson for inventing the technique, and then it dawns on him that his friend invented the technique. He's thinking of using a technique superior to the circular steps called Hector Meyer. Sword King Hector Meyer had a strange technique, but he managed to defeat the Golden Jackson. He was the last swordsman of the Forgotten Realm. He once defeated Jackson, but then my comrades and I sent him to the afterlife, sitting on the edge of the bed thinking this wouldn't have happened if he'd agreed to their terms. Henry Morris is convinced he needs to ask Hector Meyer for help. In the library, he pulls out a book of dark magic a guy didn't think he'd ever turn to. He notices that the book has a lot of mistakes, but he's glad that at least the pages are intact and can be restored. Henry Morris writes a few words on the book like the guillotine punishing criminals, the court revealing the guilty, and the Inquisition cleansing the world of sinners. Then he uses a word judgment spell calling for the words to be restored to their original form. The book glows, mistakes disappear, and erased words reappear. It's one of his best spells. Once the trial in words is over, the book is immediately closed. The guy opens the book in a hurry and sees that it's all right there now. The boy was still studying the book as night fell and the moon rose in the sky. He learns that it is very difficult to resurrect the departed, and that his resurrection can be called a miracle. To invoke the spirit to do it should be done in the full moon, and also with the object to which the spirit's nature is attached. Henry Morris starts looking out the window and realizes his only problem is the thing left behind by Hector Myers. The hero picks up chalk and draws a pattern on the floor to summon the spirit. Finished with drawing the pattern, he put candles around it and prepared for the invocation. The guy puts his palm in the center of the pattern and begins to say come, and the pattern begins to emit light. Huge beams of light enveloping the room. Henry Morris had succeeded in summoning the spirit. The guy with a smile began to look at the arriving spirit and began to say that he was glad to see him. The hero summoned the spirit of the lizard that human greed spawned. This spirit enforces the law of equal exchange. The guy starts to say that he wrote his name in time for the spell and asks if the lizard saw him. He replies that he did, and wanted to look at the one who uses the sacred name. Already burning with anger, the lizard asks who is the one who summoned him. The hero smirks, saying how come he can't recognize him. The guy starts saying he knows he likes him even though he won't admit it. The lizard is mad at the guy for not realizing what he's saying. Henry Morris started saying he's the master of the magic tower. The guy started to say that his appearance has changed due to some circumstances, but it is still the same. Lizard in turn does not believe him. The hero remembers that earlier they would have exchanged holy mandrake and branches from the tree of evil. The lizard can't believe what he's heard in surprise. He asks how he knows this. Henry Morris also recalls an incident where they exchanged the fang of a ghostly tiger and the flute of fate. The lizard is shocked. He doesn't believe the guy because the man who knew all this is long dead. The lizard asks the guy to prove he's the same Henry Morris and show his unique symbol. The hero decides to do it. At this time, he started to look at his palm, and a blue flame appears in it. The lizard is in complete shock and confusion, asking what happened to him, why he is back at the fifth circle stage and in someone else's body. The hero replies that everything happens in life, but now there is no time for it, and he is happy to see him. The lizard looked at the guy fearfully and started to say that he had seen people turn into zombies, but never like this, and that he never ceased to amaze him. Henry Morris began to say that he didn't call him in to scare him or chat him up. Now in good spirits, the lizard asks his friend to spill everything. Henry Morris asks if he remembers Sword King Hector Meyer. The lizard started saying he was the only one who could beat the Golden Jackson. The guy started saying he needed to find something directly related to it. Lizard started saying he's asking for something weird, And does he want to bury her next to the owner? Guy responds positively. The hero asks if the lizard agrees. He replies that he was created for such exchanges and that there is no thing in the world that he cannot get. However, the lizard notes that since he's facing a 5th circle mage, it's unlikely that he has anything of value to exchange. Henry Morris gets angry, saying that he underestimates him and asks him not to worry about it. Then the lizard began to say that perhaps he had something to offer, but that he should not count on his yielding. In a disgruntled tone, the hero notes that nothing has changed about him and that he will provide him with useful information in return. The lizard began to say that it was tempting, but why did he think that this information would satisfy him? The guy asks with a smirk if he's curious how he was able to be reborn. He thought about what he said and admits he was curious about the information. But the lizard notices that it's about the Sword King. The guy started saying that the information is about a successful rebirth. The hero promises to tell you all about it once he gets the Sword King thing. Grudgingly, the lizard seizes up and reveals that Henry Morris always liked to haggle. The lizard gets into a stance and prepares to summon the thing of the king needed for the guy. The lizard takes the wedding ring out of his mouth and asks the hero if he remembers that the Sword King was betrothed to the princess. The hero started to look at the ring out of his mouth in disgust and replies that of course he remembers. Satisfied with the summoned item, the Sword King lizard asks Henry Morris to take it. Before taking the ring, the guy cleans the drool off the ring, and the lizard is not happy about how squeamish he is. After Henry takes the wedding ring, he starts talking about how it's all about dark magic, and that's how he was able to be reborn. He remembers being in an unfamiliar place after being reborn, and then next to the new body, he found a lifeless chicken and some kind of book. The man whose body he's in was the one who summoned him. The guy's sure that maybe he made a mistake in the ritual, so his soul displaced the guy's soul. The lizard is puzzled by what he heard, and asks how it is possible the hero began to say that he had recovered the book, and its contents were different from what he had encountered. Henry Morris thinks it's possible his rebirth was just an accident. Hero started saying he was reborn due to misuse of dark magic, lizard asks, and that's it. The lizard gets angry and starts saying Henry Morris screwed him over again. The hero replies that he has fulfilled his part of the contract and doesn't understand why he is angry, if he wanted to hear something supernatural. The angry lizard started to look at the guy and started to say that he forgot what kind of person he is, but he doesn't understand what he doesn't like. Lizard yells at the guy to shut up and starts saying that the guy even going to the other side of the world will never change. With a face full of pleasure at what was happening, Henry Morris began to tell the lizard that he had learned a valuable lesson today. With great annoyance, the lizard spits on the floor in front of Henry and vaporizes away. Henry Morris smiled contentedly and began to stare into the void left by the lizard, talking about how cute it was. Holding the ring in his hands and looking at it, the guy hopes that no misfortune is associated with this engagement ring. Henry Morris placed the Sword King's ring in the center of the pattern and dribbled a few drops of his blood there. Henry Morris concentratedly casts an incantation in an ancient language. His blood and the Sword King's ring burst into a bright blue flame. At that moment, through the bright flames and blue glow, the gates of the departed can be seen. The gate unlocks, and behind it the boy can see Hector Meyer's eyes glowing red. The hero is confronted by the spirit of the Sword King, none other than Hector Meyer himself. The man opens his eyes and starts talking about how long it's been since he's breathed fresh air, and asks the guy where he got the ring. How many winters Lord Hector turns to the man's boyfriend and starts saying that the ring has always been with him. The Lord asks Henry Morris if they know each other because they don't recall it. The hero replies that they share a history and that his name is Henry. The man asks if he means a magician named Henry. He answers in the affirmative, and the Lord thinks he's joking because the mage he knew is nothing like him. The guy starts saying it's a long story, but he'll give him his wedding ring as proof. The hero claims to be the mage who was reborn in this body through dark magic. Lord Hector realizes he wasn't an easy magician. He didn't think the boy knew about the power of dark magic. Henry Morris interrupts him saying that he didn't use dark magic, but the guy whose body he's in did. The hero tells Lord Hector Meyer that the world has changed, and after his departure to another world, they managed to unite the continent. The Lord began to say that he was glad to hear it, because he had always wondered how others would end up with their story. The guy goes on to say that Golden Jackson had a son that sent him to the other side of the world. And the guy gets angry, and the man starts saying that traitors always lurk amongst loved ones. Henry begins to say that his anger overwhelms him, which makes him sleep badly, and asks if the Lord thinks they are alike. The guy asks if he wants revenge. The Lord guesses he called him to join forces. The hero starts to say it would be great, but he doesn't have the strength to resurrect the man. Puzzled, the Lord asks why he's here since the boy didn't call him to show off his rebirth. With hopeful eyes, Henry Morris asks Lord Hector Meyer to teach him how to wield a sword. The man is surprised at his request, started to say that in his whole life he has never heard such nonsense for what he needs it, because he is a magician. The guy replies that his current family comes from an ancient family of swordsmen, and I've already reached the heights of magic. So the guy is now interested in fighting techniques? Lord chuckles, saying that the mage involved in his banishment to the other world is now asking for help. Henry Morris guiltily starts to look at the floor and asks Hector Meyer to forgive him for this if he is still offended. The man asks what he started talking about. Henry replies that it's about their past, to which the Lord begins to laugh out loud. Hector Meyer started saying Henry wasn't as stale as he thought he was in their fight. The Lord explains that it was not only for His Majesty's sake that he defended his woman's honor, and why a knight who lost in battle should be offended and upset. Henry Morris finally exhales and begins to say that he has nothing to worry about now. The man starts saying that good mages always think too much. Then he asks if he collects trophies from lifeless bodies. The guy says his ring isn't a trophy. He took it in honor of his memory. The Lord smirks, asking if he's the one he started talking about and asking if he's a buffoon instead of a mage. Henry Morris answers that the man was the only one who was able to defeat the Golden Jackson. Besides, he was one of the few swordsmen then. Hector Meyer started to say that he didn't think he was that kind-hearted, the same answer that he just cared about him. The guy who started saying Lord Sword King answers that he became him posthumously. The man says he'll help the hero, but it's not as simple as it seems. The hero begins to say that he expected this and asks about his terms. Lord Hector is glad that he immediately understood. Sword King Hector Meyer is dead serious about his demand for a rebirth. The Lord notes that he are alike in this world, and that since he is an excellent magician, it is not difficult for him to do so. Henry Morris replies that he's not sure he can fulfill his request. The man replies that then he can't help, and that the guy is the only one left with nothing. The guy looks away with a smirk and started saying that he would have to find other ways then, and that he was satisfied with their short conversation. The Lord immediately starts asking him not to leave and starts saying that he's asking for a lot of things. He just wants to live like everyone else. Hector promises that if he revives him, he will help him avenge the king and teach him how to wield a sword. The guy starts to say that even his rebirth was an accident. The man starts saying it's all a lie. Henry Morris turns to him and asks why he doesn't believe him. The man mumbles something, cannot give a clear answer. Hero began to say that he really does not have the strength for it. He explains that summoning and rebirth are very different, and that he's not even good at dark magic. The guy seriously started telling Lord Hector that for these reasons he couldn't risk his own life. A saddened Hector lowers his head and realizes that there is really no other way, but he is grieved by the thought that he will never be able to see the white light again. Henry Morris began to look at him and began to say that the afterlife was scarier than he had imagined. That's why Hector doesn't want to go back there. He remembers being told to pray to God as a child, but he thinks he doesn't exist. Lord begins to say that after leaving to the other world, he will be nothing but emptiness and despair. After a bit of thinking, the hero suggests that they give it a try. Henry Morris began to say he didn't know if it would work, because even with his past power, he couldn't solve the mystery of life. The guy also adds that dark magic will help solve this issue and asks the Lord if he's heard of necromancy. The hero begins to say that they can breathe life into lifeless bodies. The man asks if they're like a lich. The hero began to speak almost, but still they are different. The essence of the lich is alive, and after their departure to another world, they are bound to one place and are obliged to guard it. Hector asks then who the necromancers are. The guy replies that they are like lichs but are still human. He started saying that a necromancer's power is equal to a mage's, and that it could help bring the Sword King back to life. The hero began to say that this was the only way for now, and that perhaps by learning more about them they would find clues. Hector Meyer agrees, saying anything is better than living in endless darkness. The Lord orders the boy to keep his promise, or he'll put a curse on him that will make it very hard for him. Smiling, Henry Morris started to say how it is the knight will curse the man, but promises to keep his word. Henry notices a strange glow in his hand. Opening his palm, he sees that it is the Lord's ring glowing. The man begins to say that he cursed the ring because nothing yet guarantees his honesty and asks him not to be upset. The boy began to say he understood, and that he was in his care now, and they would meet every full moon. The Lord promised to teach him everything. Man started saying he saw no reason to delay their training, and that they could start now. The hero cautiously begins to look at the enchanted ring and thinks to himself that this is why dark magic is dangerous. The Sword King is puzzled that a guy is studying imperial techniques by day and his at night. King of Swords begins, saying that fighting style is akin to a habit. The hero replies that he would then become the owner of two at once. The Lord laughs quite contentedly and begins to say that then he will experience everything for himself. Lord Hector turns his back to the hero and asks the lad to stand in the same pose. The hero gets into a stance. The man praises him but warns him that he will have a hard time getting used to the circular motion. Henry Morris starts saying he'll try and asks what the name of the moves he's teaching him are. Hector started to say that these are just normal movements and doesn't understand why they need to be called something. Then the guy started to say that he would call them Hector's steps. Hector Meyer started saying it's his business. Meanwhile, Henry Morris is already starting to practice the steps. The guy thinks the technique is uneven. He thinks he's dancing very vigorously. Henry is determined to defeat Captain Baron by all means. After a considerable amount of time practicing Hector's steps, the guy sits down on the ground weakened. Hector Meyer starts looking at the tired guy in front of him and offers the hero a little break. The Sword King realizes the diligent guy is serious about sending the king to the other side. Lord begins, telling the lad that hard work will never fail. Henry replies that mages say the same thing. The Sword King asks about Baron, who he wants to defeat. He wants to understand what he'll do after. Looking seriously at the Lord, the guy started saying after the victory, he would start studying auras. The man laughs at him, saying he's a joker for thinking about aura just by learning how to hold a sword. Henry Morris asks him to shut up because he is sure that one day he will be able to achieve the aura and become a sword mage. Lord Begin said that he would then become the first mentor to train a swordsman mage. He could not even imagine how powerful such a person could be. The Sword King jokes about the bad luck of his enemies, and the hero begins to say that by then he'll be close to the level of a sage. The man started telling him to stop talking because they need to keep practicing. It's morning, the sun is blazing over the blue sky, and at that moment, a wooden sword flies into the sky. Apparently Henry Morris, through hard training, was able to defeat Commander Baron. Henry Morris can't believe his efforts have paid off and he's finally won. Satisfied and proud of his pupil, Baron began to say that this was his ultimate victory. Henry Morris thanks Commander Baron for this fight, and the latter in turn praises the lad's steadfastness. For several days in the afternoon, the hero studied the imperial arts with Commander Baron, and at night the art of wielding Hector's sword. It took the hero 3 months to fully learn both. He even managed to defeat Baron, the best swordsman and hero of many fights. And now, there's nothing to keep the guy in this house anymore. Henry Morris's eyes are burning. He's ready for anything. And now it's time to hit the road. Commander Baron praised Henry Morris for a reason he had noticed a couple months ago, that he was really talented. A little awkwardly, the boy asks the teacher not to flatter him because he's nothing special. The teacher began to say that he was sure he had taught him circular steps, and the boy had mastered the technique and had transformed it to create a whole new style of movement. The guy finally agrees with the words of his teacher, and he in turn asks the hero what he is going to do. Henry starts to say he'd like to learn more from Baron, but his lust for power overcomes him. The man laughs, saying that all swordsmen experience this, and adds that learning to use aura is not easy. The guy starts looking at the man and starts saying that he has a favor to ask of him, and he says he'll do his best. The hero begins to say that he wants to leave and join the Imperial Army, which surprises Commander Baron. Henry asked if he had heard of the teacher's strapping position, asked if he meant the set of duties. The guy answers that yes, the obligatory position is what nobles owe the common people, like protection with money. The commander replies that their family is not of high enough status, and that they are not even counts. Henry Morris knows this, but needs to convey to everyone that they honor established responsibilities, and that this way, he will be welcome anywhere. Then Baron asks if the guy has thought about where he wants to help. He starts to say he's been eyeing a place for a while. The teacher asks if Henry Morris can tell us what this place is, and he immediately replies that it's the Forest of Evil. Commander Baron is shocked by the answer, and starts to say that he can't go there because it's too dangerous, and that the boy's father would never approve. The hero replies that his father has already approved his condition was to defeat the teacher in this fight, which he actually did. The commander's puzzled. He's going to talk to the Baron because he's against it. Henry Morris started saying there's no point, because he's already made up his mind. After a while, Baron asks the Baron if it's true that he's allowed his son to fulfill a noble duty. The father says yes, but first he had to defeat his teacher in battle. At the same moment, Henry Morris bursts into the room saying he's already done it. The Baron is in great shock, and not believing his son's words, orders Commander Baron to answer. Reluctant to send his student to such a dangerous place, he began to say that it was unfortunately true. My father bangs his fist on the table and cries out that there's no way that's possible. The hero begins to say that he has done all that was required of him and asks to be allowed to go to the Forest of Evil to help there. Baron intervenes in the conversation and asks Hans Morris not to let his son go because it would jeopardize his safety. Without giving him a chance to talk, the hero asks his father to give him a chance to prove his worth. The Baron doesn't understand why he has to go to such a dangerous place. Hans Morris began to say that due to his age, the boy did not yet understand the seriousness of the situation. Henry replies that he realizes the danger. He begins to say that this place is called the End of the Continent and that there are rumors that a demonic gate has been opened there. The Forest of Evil is famous for being the place from which countless demons have come to our world and instilled fear in the inhabitants of the Empire. Hans is angry that even though he knows of all the dangers his son is about to face, the Baron declares that he will not send him to his death. The hero asks if this is the problem, which surprises both Commander Baron and his father, Baron Hans Morris. Henry declares that if it bothers him so much, he will renounce the inheritance and assures that he never had any rights in this family and that he will not get anything out of it. The Baron gets nervous and starts saying he didn't mean it. Henry starts saying it's settled, and this is their last conversation, and he's leaving tomorrow.